the older institutions and frameworks and models that spurred their success. He called it being trapped by a sclerosis of the arteries, an institutional and organizational sclerosis trapped by the old order, which doesn't allow a country or region to adapt to the new order. So, by adopting a new growth strategy, by focusing on harnessing creativity, countries and regions, Pakistan and others, have an enormous opportunity to lift their situation and insert themselves in a new and more powerful and productive way in the global economy. Now, Nadeem mentioned in his opening remarks the focus on cities. And if the 21st century economy is an economy of creativity, the rise of creativity as an economic force, the rise of human creativity as the driver, the harnessing of human creative potential as a wealth generator across science, technology, manufacturing, service, and agriculture across the board, the 21st century has also seen the rise of a new organizing system, a new social and economic organizing unit for mobilizing that new factor of production. The original economy, the agricultural economy, was organized around farms and small trading centers, but human productive power and raw materials and fertile soil were transformed into wealth in and around an organizing system of farms. The industrial age, which combined land, labor, and capital into some of the greatest productivity improvements the world has ever seen, was organized around a new economic and social organizing unit, which Marx and Max Weber and others discussed, the industrial corporation. The rise of the modern corporation, the modern industrial firm, became the mechanism for exploiting natural resources, combining them with capital and labor, and building wealth. That system of the industrial corporation and mass industrialism had a geographic analog: suburban sprawl. When companies could break up production and, in fact, move production to different parts of their own home country and then all over the globe, they could create industrial parks and industrial areas and build larger horizontal factories. The system itself required large roads, energy production and consumption, in the advanced countries, but in the emerging economies as well, a system of home ownership which fueled that economic engine. The system was one of industrial corporations and mass suburbanism. But the rise of a creative and knowledge-driven economy has brought us to a new social and organizing unit. Whether you look at the innovative sectors of Silicon Valley, which are creating those new companies, whether you look at the clusters in Europe and throughout the world that Professor Michael Porter identifies as driving growth and specialization, what you find is that the city itself, the community itself, has become the social and economic organizing unit of our time. It is the place that innovation occurs. It's where human beings can combine and recombine their talents. A woman named Jane Jacobs, a very simple-spoken woman, wrote about this nearly 50 years ago. And in her writing, she talked about how Adam Smith made a mistake in talking about just the division of labor and efficiency. She said, where do new ideas come from? Not simply where are products made more efficient. Where can human beings combine and recombine in ways that generate new ideas? That is the role of the city. And later on, 20 years after, Robert Lucas at the University of Chicago, when he won his Nobel Prize in economics, pointed to Jane Jacobs and said, I believe Jane Jacobs has discovered the very mechanism of economic development. The very mechanism of economic development occurs not simply by building giant farms, not simply by building giant ports, not simply by building new roads, not simply through trade, not simply through giant factory systems. It occurs by mobilizing people in cities, When we combine and recombine people in cities, when we harness their creative energy, that's the spur to the great burst of creative destruction and innovation that drive growth. In my work, I've come increasingly to the conclusion that the world is not just flat. It may be flat in basic industry and in basic production, but increasingly the knowledge-driven economy is also very spiky. That, in fact, in our work, we were able to identify the great mega regions of the world. The Boston, New York, Washington corridor, the Shanghai, Beijing axis, Greater London, and many others, the 40 largest of which, although they only house 18% of the world's population, produce more than 2/3 of our economic output and 9 in 10 of our innovations. In fact, the 21st equally the century of creativity and of great cities. That will be the two mantras of our time, harnessing human creative power and building great cities which can collect and aggregate and organize this creative capability. Now, I've broken it down very simply in my work into a simple equation of economic growth that's generated some debate and some controversy, and I hope that you too will debate and discuss and add to these ideas, because I find that I learn the most. I call them initially the 3 T's of economic development, and then I added an additional T, a 4th T. The first T, which is required for economic development and growth, is a very basic one: technology. In order to drive growth forward, in order to be successful, a country, a city, a region has to invest in and harness technology. It needs to create technology in the home, in the firm, in the business. It also needs to invest in having excellent college and university research capability. But that T by itself is a necessary but insufficient condition to grow. The reason is technology can move. I lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I taught at Carnegie Mellon University. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and Carnegie Mellon University generated many great technologies, but those technologies and innovations migrated away to other parts of the United States and the world because of the second T. The second T is talent. A city or region or country needs to invest in, but not just invest in good schools, it needs to be attractive to and able to attract and harness talented and creative people. And on our research, we find something very interesting. Talented and creative people may have an advanced education, but do not necessarily need to have that. 9 in 10 people in the advanced countries who have a college degree work in the creative class, but only 4 in 10 members of the creative class have a college degree. In fact, some of the greatest impetus to creativity come from people, great entrepreneurs, who drop out of college and go on to build their companies. So creativity can come from any quarter of society. Education helps, and great universities help, but it's not coincident with that. And the fact of the matter is, as you know, that talented and creative people that are invested in by a community or country also are highly mobile, just like technology. Talented and creative people can move, which leads me to the 3rd and 4th T's. Our research finds that in order to attract and harness incredibly mobile technology and incredibly mobile, talented people, a community needs to be exciting. A city needs to be vibrant. A city needs to be dense. A city needs to have not only the work opportunities, but the social and civic aesthetic opportunities that drive this group of people. I argue that the competition, not for trade or investment, the driving force of the 21st century is the global competition for talent. In order to compete in that world, a country, a community, a region needs to have vibrant and exciting cities. It may have been sufficient in my father's time. It may have been sufficient in my time to build sprawling industrial suburban campuses surrounded by suburban subdivisions where people can come and live their life in an isolated bubble community. We've seen these all over the world. But the fact of the matter is, increasingly our demography has changed. Many more young people are single. Young professionals are single. Many more of them have postponed marriage. Some have postponed having children or decided not to have children. Women, professional men, sexual orientations have become more open-minded. In the United States, this may come as a shock, less than 50% of all adults are married. Less than 25% of all adults have children under 18 in their home. That means the offerings that people want in a location, in a city or a community, have to be something that a family can enjoy, a single person can enjoy, a couple without children can enjoy, and people increasingly want excitement. And that means that a city needs to have the third T. A city needs to be tolerant. The reason I say tolerance or social inclusion or diversity is because the communities that are most open-minded, the communities in economic parlance that have the lowest barriers to entry for people, gain an advantage because single or married, male or woman, of any age group, of any sexual orientation, can find that community an exciting place for them. I know you have Professor Oswald, my former colleague from George Mason, with you. And when I was writing my book, Rise of the Creative Class, I asked many of my students who hailed from countries all over the world, when they graduated from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, where would they like to move? The young student, a Korean,